Poland is leaving the Istanbul Convention, which is a feminist treaty designed by the Council of Europe. This is only one theater of the social justice wars against the east of Europe right now. Parallel to that, there is also a big debate about the LGBT rights stuff. There are some municipalities and cities that have written and signed charters. There are two circling around in Poland right now. One is the local government charter of the rights of the family, which does not include anything that has anything to do with LGBT, but the left-wing propagandists claim it was somehow hostile to gay people. The second one is the declaration of LGBT-free zones, and this one is directed against the political correctness speech codes. This is not about LGBT people itself. It does not infringe on any rights of any person. Poland is a very safe country for both LGBT and women. The Polish feel increasingly alienated from the west of Europe, which has widely adopted the left-wing ideology. And they are standing up. I've already read the preamble and the first two chapters of my previous videos. Now let's continue. Chapter 3, Article 12, General Obligations. Parties shall take the necessary measures to promote changes in the social and cultural patterns of behavior of women and men, with a view to eradicate prejudices, customs, traditions, and all other practices which are based on the idea of the inferiority of women, or on stereotyped roles for women and men. And this is what the Polish object to most. It's an attack on traditions. We will be lectured on whether Santa Claus should be a woman or not, and so forth. And you don't want this. You want to continue your customs. Not everything you do is leading to violence. Violence is just an excuse for them. And no, you're not going to upend your entire Catholic Christian culture, and the Polish are Catholic, only to appease feminists. Section 2 says parties shall take the necessary legislative and other measures to prevent all forms of violence covered by the scope of the convention by any natural or legal person. Again, we are talking about Europe here. We are talking about Poland, for example, and you just wonder, okay, what legal system does actually need an additional law against battery? Where is it not yet forbidden to beat women? And the entire text gives the impression that women are constantly beaten all the time. You can barely walk the street without seeing a woman with a bloody face. We are not, that's not even the case in Morocco. We are not talking about Morocco. We are talking about a treaty by the Council of Europe. Okay, the Council of Europe. The whole treaty is very repetitive, so I skip a bit and I just read the last part of the following section of that chapter. You can read it in total if you stop the video at this place. But I want to zoom in on section 5, which says parties shall ensure that culture, custom, religion, tradition, or so-called honor shall not be considered as justification for any acts of violence covered by the scope of the convention. And this is actually, let's just call it out. It's a Muslim problem, okay? It's a Muslim problem, and or it's a lefty problem, and I can go a long way, as I've already said, in making the courtrooms more transparent, and publish the public court documents online. Because there are these cases where judges, lefty judges, usually say, well, it's a Muslim and he beat his wife, so that's just his custom, that's just his culture, and so forth. But I don't see how the entire society should take precautions against honor killings and honor beatings and so forth, when these things are predominantly, first and foremost, an issue of the Muslim culture. And now we ship into the propaganda waters. Article 13 is about awareness raising. That terminology rings a bell with you probably because the left had spent the last 30-40 years with a cultish idea that they are these woke, aware, enlightened people. You must be so glad to be around those superior minds. They are morally and intellectually our superiors. At least that's the kind of idea. And they just have to now tell the rest of us how to live an enlightened, bettered life. And it says parties shall promote or conduct on a regular basis and at all levels awareness-raising campaigns or programs, including in cooperation with national human rights institutions and equality bodies, civil society and NGOs, especially women's organizations, where appropriate, to increase awareness and understanding among the general public of the different manifestations of all forms of violence covered by the scope of this convention, their consequences on children, and the need to prevent such violence. Parties shall ensure the wide dissemination among the general public of information on measures available to prevent acts of violence covered by the scope of the convention, and so forth. So acts of violence, they want a hell load of funds to go into the hands of the NGOs, and they use violence as an excuse to fight economic violence, which I assume is capitalism. All propaganda, however, starts with the children, and so Article 14 is about education. Parties shall take, where appropriate, the necessary steps to include teaching material on issues such as equality between women and men, non-stereotyped gender roles, mutual respect, non-violent conflict resolution in interpersonal relationships, gender-based violence against women, and the right to personal integrity, adapted to the evolving capacity of learners in formal curricula and at all levels of education. Parties shall take the necessary steps to promote the principles referred to in paragraph 1 in formal educational facilities, as well in sports, cultural and leisure facilities, and in the media. So on all level and totalitarian in every aspect of your life, like the Sharia, they want their gender stuff to be floated. And the thing is, with this equality between men and women, and that they want a non-conforming idea, they do not plan that, I don't know, women stop playing with dolls and boys stop playing with footballs, and maybe instead they all puzzle, let's say. No, actually, the thing is, girls are kind of the better sex, so they can kind of stay in their lane as long as they have a full-time career and don't have children of their own. But despite the criticism of anti-feminists, girls are okay, but then there is the bad sex, the bad gender. The boys, they really should rather wear skirts, shouldn't they? The innovation, the new man, the new idea, try something else, is that the guy just has to become a girl. And because this is so all-encompassing, of course, everybody has to be trained in the one and only religion, training of professionals, and it's all totally unspecified. As I'm reading out, try to pin what the heck they actually mean. It's really hard because these people want to be vague on purpose. They don't want to specify any specifics. So it says parties shall provide or strengthen appropriate training for the relevant professionals dealing with victims or perpetrators of all acts of violence covered by the scope of the Convention on the Prevention and Detection of Such Violence, equality between women and men, the needs and rights of victims, as well as on how to prevent secondary victimization. So the professionals who deal with the perpetrators and the victims of equality between women and men, because that's what grammatically it says, isn't it? Just double check, but yes, the relevant professionals dealing with victims or perpetrators on the prevention of violence, equality between women and men. So the prevention of equality between women and men. Number two is parties shall encourage that the training referred to in paragraph 1 includes training on coordinated multi-agency cooperation to allow for a comprehensive and appropriate handling of referrals in cases of violence covered by the scope of the convention. Whatever the heck they mean. But these people stress and emphasis on everything that sounds cuddly and cooperative and nice and sweet and multilateral and so forth. This is some claptrap for their general sound, Article 16, preventive intervention and treatment programs. Number 1, parties shall take the necessary legislative and other measures to set up or support programs aimed at teaching perpetrators of domestic violence to adopt non-violent behavior in interpersonal relationships with a view to preventing further violence and changing violent behavioral patterns. I originally wanted to make the argument that it's an interpersonal thing and you always have to assess whether the thing you try to achieve is best achieved through proxy interventions, through your neighbor, your friends, your doctor, and so forth, or if you want the entire community to hang around and negotiate your marriage and so forth. I'm refraining from that because I fear if I make a three-dimensional cautious argument for the dangers of calling the authorities and the different life situations and so forth, the shrieking could cut me down. So I self-censor myself. I don't want to be seen as somebody who is apologetic for any domestic violence. Of course, I'm not. And so there will be no nuance in my argumentation and no libertarian view for this one. Number 2, parties shall take the necessary legislative or other measures to set up or support treatment programs aimed at preventing perpetrators, in particular sex offenders, from re-offending. I must say that I'm tired of this entire re-education approach to our judicial system. I'm not sure how this is handled in Poland, but here in Germany we have come used to the approach that we are supposed to parent criminals, to parent perpetrators, and this sounds soft and sweet and nice and so forth, but I would rather live in a society where everybody can live a free life and is not constantly educated and nudged and parented, but that only and only the actual criminals are being punished. That would be good enough for me. I want freedom for the average person and punishment for the offenders. Number 3, in taking the measures referred to in paragraph 1 and 2, parties shall ensure that the safety of, support for, and the human rights of victims are of primary concern, and that, where appropriate, these programs are set up and implemented in close coordination with specialist support services for victims. I'm not even sure what they try to say here and what this paragraph is for. Article 17, participation of the private sector and the media. Parties shall encourage the private sector, the information and communication technology sector, and the media with due respect for freedom of expression, that's lip service, and the independence to participate in the elaboration and implementation of policies and to set guidelines and self-regulatory standards to prevent violence against women and to enhance respect for their dignity. Again, we are told that women are constantly battered around and bashed, and that dignity is threatened. Yes, by geeks, by some computer scientists and also some media types. The private sector, the capitalism is behind them. Women are really at danger. And number 2, parties shall develop and promote in cooperation with private sector actors skills among children, parents, and educators on how to deal with the information and communication environment that provides access to degrading content of a sexual or violent nature, which might be harmful. I don't want children to watch pornography, but this is also a thing I think parents can take care of.